This winter, a police officer on a lonely mountain road in Montana followed a trail of paw prints into a storm that refused to stop. What he found under a broken cabin would change his life forever. A German shepherd mother so thin her ribs showed through the snow. 4 newborn puppies pressed against her chest, and one tiny life that was already slipping away. She did not bark. She did not beg. She only looked at him as if asking one silent question. Are you here to save us, or to leave us behind? Stay with this story because what happens next will restore your faith in hope and in the quiet power of compassion. And before we begin, tell us where you are watching from today and leave a comment below. Silver Pine? Montana had not seen the sun in 3 days. The town lay under a cathedral of snow, rooftops bowed, pine trees frozen in prayer, wind howling through the narrow streets like some ancient hymn of winter. Streetlights glowed pale gold against the blizzard, their halos swallowed almost instantly by falling white. The temperature had dropped far below anything merciful, the kind of cold that did not bite but claimed. On the northern edge of town, where the pavement surrendered to forest and forgotten buildings, Officer Nathan Cole drove slowly, his patrol truck crunching through drifts that no plow had reached. Nathan was 38, tall and broad-shouldered, with the posture of a man who had once been built for war and had since been repurposed for peace. His dark hair was cut close, streaked at the temples with early gray, his face weathered by years of winter patrols and quieter storms no one could see. A faint scar traced his right eyebrow, a souvenir from a pursuit years earlier, and his eyes carried that calm, watchful patience common among men who had learned too young that life could break without warning. In Silver Pine, people trusted him not because he spoke often, but because he arrived in storms, in grief, in the middle of the night without being asked. That night he was running a perimeter check along Old Timber Road, a narrow stretch that once served logging crews and now only served memory. As the wind surged, his headlights swept across something dark dragging across the snow. Nathan slowed. The shape was wrong. Not animal, not branch. He parked, stepped out into the storm, the cold clawing instantly through his gloves. Kneeling, he saw them. A line of paw prints, unsteady, heavy in the back, leading toward a collapsed hunting cabin near the tree line. The structure leaned at an angle, roof caved in on one side, boards warped and gray from years of abandonment. Beneath the lowest beam, snow had been hollowed out into a shallow den, and there she was. The German shepherd lay half inside the opening, half guarding the world. Kaya, though he would not know her name until much later, was no more than 2 years old by his estimate, yet her body told a longer story. Her coat, once thick and noble, now hung dull and brittle, rimed with frost. Her ribs pressed visibly against her skin. One ear stood erect, the other bore a small tear, the kind earned not from birth but from surviving something sharp. Her eyes were the color of winter amber clear, unbroken and entirely unafraid. She did not growl. She did not bark. She stared at him, not in fear, not in hope, in question. Behind her, half hidden beneath her body, he saw movement. 4 small shapes pressed together for warmth, each the size of his gloved hand. One of them trembled so violently it looked as if the wind itself lived inside him. Around the smallest pup's neck was a torn strip of blue wool, perhaps once part of a scarf, now threadbare and fraying. The puppy clutched it with his mouth even in sleep. Nathan exhaled slowly. He lowered himself until he was sitting on the snow, hands open on his knees, eyes angled away so as not to challenge her. The wind roared around them. Kaya's gaze never left his face. "Hey, girl," he said quietly, his voice nearly lost beneath the storm. "You've been fighting hard, haven't you?" He did not move closer. He did not reach. After a long moment, he stood, returned to his truck, and retrieved what little he had, a protein bar, half a sandwich from earlier, a bottle of water already half frozen. When he came back, he placed the food on the snow just outside the den and stepped away. Kaya did not touch it. She shifted only enough to nose the food backward toward her pups. The smallest pup stirred, dragged the blue wool against his chest, and began to chew with weak, determined jaws. Nathan felt something inside his chest tighten, the way it had not since his wife's funeral years earlier. He remained there, sitting on the frozen ground for almost an hour, until the cold began to creep into his bones. When he finally rose, he spoke softly, not expecting her to understand words, only intention. I'll be back tomorrow." Kaya did not blink. That night, Nathan did not sleep. The next morning, the storm had not relented. He returned before sunrise, this time carrying a thermal blanket, fresh food, and a small bowl of warm water. The world around the cabin was silent except for the wind combing the forest. Kaya was in the same position. She had not moved. Her eyes followed him, but her body did not tense. He placed the food down. She sniffed the air, glanced at the pups, then nudged the meal toward them again. She still would not eat. One pup crawled toward the warmth, then collapsed. Nathan noticed the smallest blue wool still clutched in his mouth, struggling to lift his head. His breathing came in shallow, uneven pulls, each one an effort. Nathan understood immediately. This was no longer waiting. This was counting minutes. He returned the next day and the next. Each time he sat. Each time he spoke quietly of nothing. Of the road, of the snow, of how the storm would pass. Kaya listened. By the third night, the pup with the blue wool Echo, he would later name him, no longer cried. His body trembled less, not from strength, but from failing warmth. Nathan placed his gloved hand against the ground near the den. The cold there was deep enough to steal breath. He stood. Tomorrow, he knew, could be too late. Morning came to Silver Pine without color. The sky was a sheet of dull iron, the sun hidden behind thick curtains of snow that refused to loosen their grip. The storm had not broken in the night. If anything, it had grown more deliberate, as though winter itself had decided to remain. Officer Nathan Cole returned to the cabin just after dawn, his patrol truck moving carefully through drifts that reached the doors. He wore the same heavy coat, the same dark gloves stiff with ice, and on his face the same quiet resolve that had carried him through blizzards, wrecks, and the long years since he had last believed in anything gentle. Kaya was exactly where he had left her. Her body lay curved around her 4 pups like the last wall between them and the world. Frost clung to the edges of her fur. One ear twitched when Nathan stepped from the truck, but she did not rise, did not bare her teeth, did not retreat deeper into the den. Her amber eyes followed him with slow, unwavering focus. Nathan moved carefully, making sure each step was slow, deliberate, non-threatening. He carried a cloth sack this time, filled with better food, higher protein, warm water sealed in a thermos, and a folded thermal blanket. He knelt where he always knelt, several feet from the opening, and set the items down one by one. "Morning, girl," he said, his voice low, steady. The storm's still angry, but we're not. Kaya did not respond to the words, but she responded to the sound. Her breathing slowed. Her tail, stiff with cold, shifted once against the snow. Nathan placed the bowl of water first, then the food. He slid them forward only enough for the scent to reach her. He did not try to move closer. Kaya sniffed the air. Her gaze flicked back toward the pups. Then, exactly as she had done the day before, she leaned forward and nudged the food backward into the den with her nose. She still would not eat. The puppies stirred. The largest of the 4, thick-coated and dark, crawled toward the warmth. Another, gray and white, stumbled clumsily, too young to know where its legs ended and the world began. But the smallest, Echo, did not move. Echo lay curled against the far wall of the hollow, his chest rising in faint, uneven pulses. The strip of blue wool was still in his mouth, wet from shallow breathing, frayed threads sticking to his muzzle like snowflakes. Nathan felt his jaw tighten. He waited. Minutes passed. Then more. Kaya lowered her head and licked the larger pups, coaxing them toward the food, guiding them with gentle nudges. When one of them tried to climb over Echo, she blocked the movement with her foreleg, careful, precise. Her focus never wavered from the den. Every action was measured. Every movement carried the weight of survival. Nathan remained seated until the cold began to bite through his boots. Before he left, he unfolded the thermal blanket and slid it just close enough for Kaya to reach. She did not take it immediately. Only after his truck disappeared around the bend did she stretch her neck and pull the blanket backward, tucking it beneath the smallest pup. That night, the wind howled so fiercely through Silver Pine that even the old logging signs screamed. Nathan returned again the next morning, and the next. Each time the ritual repeated. Kaya never ate first. She never rested. She never closed both eyes at once. Her body was failing. He could see it in the hollow of her flanks, in the stiffness of her movements, in the way her breath sometimes rattled before settling, but she did not slow. On the third evening, as darkness pressed in and the snow thickened, Nathan brought a small hand mirror from his kit. He held it near the den's opening, watching Echo's breath fog the glass. The fog was faint, inconsistent. Nathan swallowed. He pulled out his phone and made the call he had been avoiding. "Animal Control," the dispatcher said, her voice thin through the static. "This is Officer Cole in Silver Pine," Nathan replied. "I've got a German Shepherd and 4 pups under an abandoned cabin on old timber, the smallest ones in critical condition." There was a pause. Wind roared into the line. "Storm's grounded all units," she said. "Roads north of Pine Cut are impassable. Earliest we can reach you is 48 hours, maybe longer." Echo did not have 48 hours. Nathan closed his eyes. "Copy," he said. "I'll hold the site." He ended the call and returned to the snow. Kaya watched him approach, her posture unchanged. He knelt again, closer this time, just one small step inside her comfort line. She did not retreat, but her ears flattened slightly, her body stiffening. "It's getting bad," Nathan murmured, keeping his gaze on the snow. "I know you don't trust me, you shouldn't, but that little one, he's slipping." Kaya's gaze followed his eyes toward Echo. The wind surged, snow filled the hollow. Echo's chest shuddered, then stilled for one terrible second before pulling in another shallow breath. Nathan stayed until the stars vanished behind cloud. When he finally left, his boots dragged, his hands shook. That night, he did not go home. He remained in his truck near the ridge, engine idling, eyes fixed on the broken outline of the cabin, watching the storm erase the world inch by inch. Just before dawn, he packed the back seat with supplies: a reinforced crate, a heat pack, a thick rescue blanket, medical gloves, and warm broth sealed in thermos steel. He did not wait for the sun. Kaya was awake when he arrived. Her body was rigid, her breathing labored. Frost lined her whiskers. One of the larger pups whimpered softly. Echo made no sound at all. Nathan approached slowly, carrying the crate. He set it down several feet from the den and sat beside it, unmoving, letting the scent of warmth and broth drift. Kaya's eyes flicked from him to the crate, then back to Echo. Time passed. Minutes stretched thin. Then Kaya stood. Her legs trembled beneath her weight. She stepped forward once, then stopped, looking at Nathan with eyes that no longer questioned his intent but the cruelty of the world. She turned back, nosed Echo free of the blanket, and lifted him with extraordinary care. The storm fell silent in that moment. Kaya took 3 slow steps and placed Echo on the snow beside the crate. She looked at Nathan, not with fear, with surrender. The storm did not stop when Kaya placed Echo at Nathan's feet. It only seemed to lean closer, as if the mountain itself were listening. Nathan knelt in the snow, the crate open beside him, his breath coming fast and white. Echo lay between them, so small he looked more like a fallen leaf than a living creature. His chest fluttered once, twice, then stilled for a beat long enough to make Nathan's vision blur. "Okay," Nathan whispered. "Okay, sweetheart, I've got you." He did not reach for Echo immediately. He looked at Kaya first. She stood rigid, her body angled protectively toward the remaining pups, but her eyes were on Nathan. They were no longer asking what kind of man he was. They were telling him what kind of mother she was. Slowly, deliberately, Nathan slid his gloved hands beneath Echo's fragile body. The puppy was weightless, his skin burning cold through the fabric. Nathan felt his throat close as he lifted him and placed him inside the crate on the rescue blanket. He tucked the blue strip of wool around Echo's neck where it belonged. Kaya did not move. She watched every motion, every breath. Nathan closed the crate just enough to shield Echo from the wind and leaned back on his heels. He waited. He spoke quietly into the space between them, not to fill it, but to keep it alive. "I'll bring him back," he promised. "I swear I will." Kaya did not bark. She simply lowered her head once. Nathan carried the crate to his truck and drove into the storm. The road out of Silver Pine had become little more than a memory beneath the snow. Visibility shrank to nothing. Twice the truck slid. Once he thought he had lost the road entirely. All the while he spoke to Echo, his voice the only thing still steady in a world unraveling. "Hang on, you're not done yet." At the edge of town, lights cut through the white. The veterinary clinic was the only building still glowing. Inside, warmth struck Nathan like a wave. The vet on duty, Dr. Eleanor Hale, was a woman in her early 50s with silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun and the calm, capable hands of someone who had held life and death in balance for decades. She took one look at Echo and swore softly. Hypothermia, severe dehydration, malnutrition. He's crashing. They moved fast. Fluids, warming pads, oxygen. Nathan stood useless against the wall, the blue strip of wool clenched in his fist. At one point, Echo's chest stopped. Dr. Hale's voice was steady. Not today. She worked until the rhythm returned. Hours passed. The storm howled against the windows. When dawn finally came, Echo was still alive. Nathan sank into a chair. "I'm not leaving him," he said. Dr. Hale studied his face, then nodded. "Good." By the second evening, Echo's breathing had steadied. His body still trembled, but the tremor had strength now. Nathan held the blue wool beside Echo's paws, and the tiny mouth closed around it, just as it had under the cabin. Nathan cried then. He returned to Silver Pine that night with an empty crate and a full heart. Kaya was where he had left her. Her posture had not changed. The pups pressed against her flank, hungry, tired, alive. When Nathan knelt, he showed her the empty crate, the blanket, the faint warmth of Echo's scent. "He's fighting," Nathan told her, "just like you." Kaya's ears shifted forward. Nathan stayed with them for hours, speaking of nothing and everything, until the storm began to loosen its grip on the sky. 2 days later, the road opened. Nathan returned with help. The rescue team from Silver Pine Shelter arrived with transport cages, warming gear, and careful hands. At first, Kaya bristled, her body low, her eyes sharp. Nathan knelt beside her, his voice steady. "They're here to help." Time passed. Kaya watched each movement. Then without sound, she stood. One by one, the pups were lifted, wrapped, placed gently in the carrier. Kaya stepped into the crate herself, calm, exhausted, resolute. The cabin disappeared behind them as they drove away. 3 days later, Echo came home. Nathan carried him into the shelter, wrapped in the rescue blanket. Kaya rose, her body rigid for a heartbeat. Then she moved forward. She sniffed his face, his ears, his paws, and pressed her nose against his neck. Echo's tail flicked once. Kaya exhaled, long and slow. Winter loosened its hold on the room. Echo's life did not return all at once. It came back in fragments. The first thing Nathan noticed was the sound of the IV drip, steady and unrelenting, like a clock that refused to let the night swallow them. The second was the warmth. Not the fierce heat of a furnace, but the careful, deliberate warmth of medicine and human attention. The veterinary clinic glowed softly against the dark, a small island of light inside the storm's fading roar. Echo lay inside a clear enclosure, wrapped in a fleece blanket that was far too large for him. His breathing was still shallow, but it no longer vanished for those terrifying seconds the way it had the night before. The blue strip of wool rested beneath his chin, damp with the memory of his breath. Nathan had not left his chair. Dr. Eleanor Hale stood near the counter, reviewing charts. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back, her posture straight, her expression tired but focused. She had the manner of a woman who had walked beside suffering for decades and had never once mistaken it for something temporary. "He's stable," she said quietly. "That doesn't mean he's safe. Not yet." Nathan nodded. His eyes never left Echo. The hours dragged. Outside, snow finally eased, but inside the clinic the long night pressed on, heavy and unmoving. Nathan's thoughts drifted constantly back to the cabin, to Kaya, to the other pups curled beneath her ribs, waiting. Shortly before dawn, Echo's chest hitched. His tiny body stiffened. The monitor spiked. Dr. Hale moved instantly. The nurse, Claire Jensen, a woman barely past 30 with warm brown eyes and a calm that masked years of emergency training, followed her lead without a word. Nathan stood frozen against the wall. For several minutes the room belonged to the language of medicine. Then the monitor steadied. Echo breathed. Nathan's knees gave out and he slid back into the chair, his face in his hands. When morning finally broke, the storm had loosened its grip on Silver Pine. Pale sunlight filtered through the windows. The world had not ended in the night. Dr. Hale allowed Nathan to sit beside the enclosure. He rested 2 fingers against the plastic wall, as close to Echo as he could be without breaking the barrier. "You did your part," she told him. "Now he has to do his." Nathan nodded, though the words barely reached him. He returned to the cabin that evening. Kaya was waiting. She had not moved far from the den. Her body looked thinner, her movements stiffer, but her eyes remained fixed on the road. When Nathan approached, he knelt slowly, showing her the blanket, the empty crate, the faint scent of Echo still clinging to the fabric. "He's alive," Nathan said softly. "He's still fighting." Kaya leaned forward and sniffed the cloth. Her ears tilted forward. She exhaled, a low breath that carried something like release. Nathan stayed for hours, speaking quietly, keeping the pups warm, watching the slow, endless patience of a mother who had nothing left but will. 2 days later, the roads reopened. The Silver Pine Animal Shelter's transport arrived just after noon, their tires cutting black lines through the melting snow. The lead rescuer, Michael Rourke, a tall man with weathered skin and a gentle voice that carried far more compassion than his appearance suggested, stepped carefully toward the cabin. Kaya stiffened. Nathan moved first, kneeling beside her, his voice low. "They're here to help." Rourke stayed back, letting Nathan do the talking. The pups were transferred first, one by one, wrapped in warm towels. Kaya watched every movement, muscles coiled, but she did not attack. She did not flee. When the last pup was placed safely inside the carrier, Kaya looked at Nathan. He nodded. She stepped forward and entered the crate. The cabin fell silent behind them. They drove to the shelter as the sky finally cleared. 3 days later, Nathan returned to the clinic. Echo was stronger, still fragile, still small, but alive. Dr. Hale lifted him carefully and placed him into Nathan's arms. Echo did not cry. He only clutched the blue strip of wool and breathed. Nathan carried him to the shelter. Kaya froze when she saw him. Then she moved. She pressed her nose against his face, his ears, his paws. Echo's tail flicked once. Kaya released a sound that was not a bark, not a whine, but something like a sigh that had been waiting its entire life. For the first time since the storm began, winter loosened its hold. The shelter did not look like a miracle. It was a low building on the edge of town, paint peeling, fences leaning, the ground still half frozen from the storm. But inside those walls, heat lived, light lived, and after everything they had endured, that was enough. Kaya stood at the threshold of the kennel, her body rigid with exhaustion, her eyes scanning every corner of the unfamiliar space. The pups huddled behind her, blinking at the brightness, their legs still clumsy from hunger and cold. Echo lay wrapped in the blanket beside Nathan's boots, the blue strip of wool tucked under his chin. Nathan knelt slowly, keeping his hands low, letting Kaya decide how close he could be. "You're safe," he whispered. Kaya's ears twitched. Shelter staff moved quietly around them. Lena Torres, the coordinator on duty, a compact woman with thick dark hair and eyes sharpened by years of rescue work, directed the others with silent gestures. No one rushed, no one spoke too loudly. They understood the language of animals that had survived too much. Kaya stepped into the kennel. She circled once, then twice, checking every wall, every corner, every scent. Only when she was satisfied did she lower herself beside the pups. Nathan placed Echo gently against her chest. Kaya sniffed him, slow and thorough, then pressed her nose to his neck. Echo stirred, his tail flicking weakly. Kaya's body loosened for the first time since the storm began. That night, the wind outside fell quiet. Over the following days, life returned in small pieces. The pups gained strength. Rowan, the largest, began to explore the kennel with bold, clumsy confidence. Sky, pale-coated and quick, followed him everywhere. Flint, dark and serious, preferred to stay close to Kaya's side. Echo remained fragile, his legs trembling when he tried to stand, but each day he tried again. Nathan came every evening after his shift. He brought new towels, better food. A small stuffed fox that the pups fought over with sudden, glorious energy. For the first time, laughter, tiny, breathless puppy laughter filled the space. Kaya watched it all. She still let the pups eat first. Always. One night, as snow melted into rivulets along the shelter windows, Nathan sat on the concrete floor beside the kennel. Lena joined him, lowering herself carefully, arms wrapped around her knees. "They're healing faster because you didn't give up," she said quietly. Nathan shook his head. "They're healing because she didn't." Lena glanced at Kaya. The German shepherd lay curled around her children, eyes half closed, one ear always alert. "She waited for someone," Lena said. "Most of them do. Most of them wait. But no one comes." Nathan did not answer. Days passed, weeks. The shelter staff began whispering about adoption. Families came, they pointed, they asked questions. Nathan felt something tighten in his chest each time. When Lena finally placed the adoption forms on the front desk, he froze. Kaya's name was written at the top. 4 smaller boxes below: Echo, Rowan, Sky, Flint. "I thought maybe you'd want to make it official," Lena said gently. Nathan stared at the papers. He wasn't ready. That night, he sat with them longer than usual. He fed the pups by hand. He brushed Kaya's coat, the dullness slowly giving way to warmth and shine. Echo fell asleep against his knee, the blue wool still clutched between his teeth. People continued to come. One family lingered. Another returned twice. Driving home one night, Nathan pulled over at the edge of town, the sky blazing with winter stars, and realized the truth he had been avoiding. He did not want anyone else to take them, not because he feared for their safety, but because they were already home. He took out his phone, texted Lena, 3 words: "I'm ready." The next morning, Lena was crying when he walked through the door. "You're taking all 5?" she asked. "Yes." He signed every page, slowly, carefully, without hesitation. Mara first. No, Kaya. Her name had already been chosen by life, then Echo, Rowan, Sky, Flint. The shelter gave him a crate, food, blankets, a starter bed. But as he loaded them into his truck, Kaya in the passenger seat, the pups nestled together behind. It did not feel like supplies. It felt like family. Snow fell gently the morning Nathan brought them home. Not the violent, screaming snow of the storm that had almost claimed them, but a soft, patient snowfall that drifted down from a pale winter sky as if the mountain itself had finally learned how to forgive. Nathan's house stood on the edge of Silver Pine, a small wooden structure with a stone chimney and wide windows that looked out toward the forest. He had spent the last 3 nights preparing. The floors were scrubbed, rugs laid. A corner of the living room transformed into something that might pass for a kingdom of blankets, bowls, and borrowed toys. He had even installed nightlights along the hallway, unsure whether it was for the puppies or for himself. Kaya was the first to step from the truck. She stood on the porch, tall and still, her breath lifting in white clouds. Her coat, now fuller and softer, caught the light. The scar on her ear remained, a small banner of survival. Her amber eyes scanned the yard, the trees, the horizon. Only when she was satisfied did she cross the threshold. Inside, the world smelled different. Wood, soap, warmth. The puppies tumbled after her, paws slipping on the floor, tails wagging with wild, unstoppable energy. Rowan immediately claimed the largest blanket. Sky vanished under the couch. Flint dragged a toy into the corner like he was building a fortress. Echo padded straight to the center of the rug, laid down his blue strip of wool, and curled around it like he had always lived there. Nathan sat on the floor and waited. Kaya approached him slowly. She lowered her head into his lap. Nathan's hands trembled as he rested them against her neck. She released a deep, shaking sigh that seemed to carry every frozen night of her life out of her chest and into the warmth of the room. That night, the house did not sleep. Tiny paws tapped across hardwood. Soft whimpers echoed. Nathan remained on the couch, Echo pressed against his leg, Kaya stationed by the door as if guarding the entire world. But something had changed. She did not stand. She rested. The days that followed were loud and messy and perfect. The pups discovered every sunbeam, every loose sock, every shadow under the bed. Sky learned how to climb the stairs faster than any of them. Rowan carried everything: shoes, pillows, entire blankets across the living room with heroic determination. Flint slept in the laundry basket. Echo never let go of the blue wool. Kaya changed too. Her ribs disappeared. Her coat darkened. She ran. Every morning she nudged the back door open, burst into the yard, and sprinted the fence line like a storm that no longer had to fear itself. Then she returned, circling the pups with the pride of a general surveying her troops. Nathan watched it all with coffee in his hands, heart growing heavier and lighter at the same time. He woke earlier. He slept deeper. Work felt smaller. He had purpose. One evening as the sun slid behind the mountains, Nathan sat on the porch. Kaya joined him. No leash, no command, just presence. He scratched behind her ears. "You saved me too," he whispered. She did not answer. She did not need to. The knock came on a quiet Sunday morning. Nathan opened the door to find Lena from the shelter standing beside a man in a clean city jacket, sunglasses reflecting the snow. His posture was stiff, professional. "Mr. Cole," the man said, "there's been a report. The cabin on Old Timber was scheduled for demolition. The city received a complaint regarding unauthorized animal removal." Nathan felt the air leave his lungs. Lena stepped forward. "They were dying," the man continued, eyes fixed on his clipboard. "Do you have proof they were in distress?" Nathan did not answer. He did not have photographs. He had memory. Then the house behind him stirred. Kaya walked forward, calm and strong. The pups followed in a crooked line. Echo came last, dragging the blue wool like a flag. The man's voice faltered. He knelt, examining the faint scar on Echo's leg, the way Kaya stood in front of the pups without fear, without sound. Lena spoke quietly. "They're standing proof of survival." The man closed his clipboard. "Take care of them," he said. He left. That night, Nathan lay on the floor. Echo curled beside him, Kaya resting near the door, the others in a tangled heap of dreams. Snow fell outside. Winter had finally let go. Sometimes the greatest miracles do not arrive with thunder or fire from the sky. They arrive quietly through ordinary people who choose love when the world feels cold. This story reminds us that God often works through simple acts of compassion. One man choosing not to walk away, one mother dog refusing to abandon her children, one small life saved in the middle of a winter storm. In our own lives, we face moments like this every day, moments where we can pass by or we can stop, moments where we can protect or we can pretend not to see, and when we choose kindness, we become part of the miracle God is creating in the world. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment to tell us what this message means to you. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss more stories of faith, love, and second chances. And may God bless you and your family with peace, protection, and strength in every season of life. If you believe in miracles and the power of love through God, please comment. Amen. Thank you for being part of this journey.